Welcome to the Decompression Chamber. My name is Andrea, your humble host, and joining me this week is my pal, Ashlee, also known as Not Funny White Girl on Twitter. How are you doing today, Ashlee?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. All right, so we'll go ahead and do like we do with all of our guests and get your background. Where are you from?
I'm kind of from Jacksonville, I would say, is my main hometown, Jacksonville, Florida. Go Jacks.
Hell yeah.
Um, but I kind of floated all around. I've been lived growing up England and Albuquerque, New Mexico, and all over the place, and then settled down in Jacksonville. So that's where I call my hometown.
Well, yeah, that definitely sounds like it has a magnetic effect on you. But England and Albuquerque, did you have parents in the military or oil industry? What was all the moving around about?
Yeah. My dad, he is in the Air Force.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so we bounced around all over the place till I was about 10. Then, like a lot of parents did, in the 90s, they divorced, and we went back to Jacksonville. Um,
Okay.
I lived in Alabama a lot. That's like my second hometown. Little teeny tiny town of Millbrook, but that's where I went to school. But
Okay.
after I graduated high school, went to Jacksonville and stayed there till I ended up here in New Orleans.
all, all right. Yeah. Hey, not too bad. You can tell us all about the southeast. But
Exclusively.
yeah,
Never
yeah.
been up north. Never been up to your neck of the woods.
That's probably a good thing. But it's also cool. Um, probably not too many people get to say that they remember the formation of their favorite football team, but Jaguars, of course, are what, 94? So.
Yeah, 94, 95. I remember when they were building the stadium, we'd go there and be like, oh, wow. We're big time now.
Heck yeah. Yeah. No, Jacksonville's great. I used to do, Fourth Fleet. The Navy's kind of out of that area, so I used to go down there sometimes do some training. But yeah, definitely a great area
Yeah.
and nice place to call home. But you said you're in New Orleans now.
Yeah, that's where I work. I live outside of New Orleans. I got a good little haul going to work and back, but I
Oh,
live right past Picayune, Mississippi.
wow. I'm sure that's a commute, but I was just hearing the other day. What was it? New Orleans needs about 2,000 police officers, and they have only about 500. So that sounds supremely dangerous.
It is. Um, there's the mayor that I want to blame, but some people have said it's not just the mayor's fault. But New Orleans kind of has that TikTok trend where they're all bouncing around on cop cars and
Oh,
waving guns around, downtown New Orleans. It's not really a good look for recruitment either.
no, I don't imagine it would be. Yeah, firearm safety rules don't apply, and the results speak for themselves. Um,
Yeah, there is an interesting thing going on right now where people randomly get shot on I-10
oh,
during rush hour.
how?
It's just, and the cops are like, we don't see a pattern. We don't know if it's anyone specifically. So I'm like, that's wonderful. There's just random people that get mad enough that they're, co-drivers on the road to just pull out a gun and shoot them.
That's completely insane to me. Holy Santa Claus shit. Yeah, just start. Well, and it's also crazy that like the cops don't see a pattern. It's like, isn't that kind of your job? Be able to see some patterns, track down some leads. I don't know, the basics.
It's like a mile stretch on I-10, which is a super long interstate. Maybe dig a little deeper, but uh,
Wow. Wow, that is astonishing. Well, do you happen to take I-10 to your peaceful?
yeah, I do.
Oh
I
my
do.
God, are you packing, or do you have a grenade or
No,
something?
I just don't. I don't drive during rush hour. That's how I solve it.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, whatever
I
it
either
takes.
work like I either work 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. So
Okay.
I avoid traffic. Luckily, I can work with my boss about it. I'm like, look, I'm the only one here that drives right where this is all going on. Can we just make it work? for me a little bit, and they did. So
Good,
that's
good.
awesome.
I'm glad. Yeah, that is
It's an odd request to make. I never thought I would deal with, but
well, yeah, I mean, what an odd thing to take into account of your commute is like, well, it's not just rush hour and heavy traffic and commute times. It's being shot at. I'd like to avoid that. Yeah, I mean, just basic safety considerations. Wow. Um,
there was a woman, you'll see, I'm sure I've Twitter posted it. It's like this lady that was like 6 minutes behind someone that got just randomly shot. She only got shot in like the leg. So
oh,
she didn't die or anything, so it's great.
oh, well,
Uh,
fantastic. Yeah, I mean, then
but
that's not
it
even
was,
attempted murder. Who cares?
but New Orleans East is where they say even if you're like flat tire, um, don't pull over. Just drive on the rim. Your radiator's over. Just try to make it out of New Orleans East before you ask for help. Um,
Wow.
and it was there that this all happened, so everybody was diverted. But luckily, I'm in a truck, so I got to hop around and go over certain things I normally wouldn't be able to do, and got away as quick as possible. And it was so nerve because they shut down the whole I-10, both directions. So it's like,
Wow.
holy cow, how do I get home? I'm on the other side, far away.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No kidding. Holy crap.
that was the tipping point where I asked,
All
hey,
right,
let's go
so
to
basically you're saying that you do have combat experience, so that's good. For those of you listening, I should have mentioned Ashlee herself is not a veteran, but that's actually really important for the topic we'll get into a little bit later. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, so all right, Dad was Air Force. Do you live in a war zone? Um, and anything else you want to tell the listeners about your background? Little fun fact.
uh, I don't know. Yes, our last year was an incredibly horrible year for me, but that would be something far off to talk about and nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Okay.
I ended up here from Jacksonville for certain reasons, but
Yeah, yeah. No, and I know what you're talking about there, and yeah, we can move on to a topic to cover for the day. Sure, a lot of people have heard about it, but the military is having a hell of a time meeting its recruiting goals, and this is why I wanted a civilian on to talk about how the military might be able to meet its recruiting goals for this one specific reason. The military recruits from civilians. There is such a thing as prior service recruiters, but they don't do nearly the business as the strict civilian recruiters. Um, so yeah, I want to get Ashlee's perspective on why the military is having such a tough time getting warm, capable bodies in uniform.
well,
Do you have any ideas or
I,
anything that immediately comes to mind?
I would say that growing up, like when I lived in Alabama, that's where I went to high school. So I would say a good majority of the people I grew up with there, most of them did grow up or did end up joining the military.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't done by any recruiter, I can tell you that much. Nobody ever, I mean, they had the JROTC,
Yeah, yeah.
and they had things like that in school, but they didn't have, I never was approached by any kind of recruiter there. So I don't think like a personal recruiter, I think what used to drive recruitment wasn't necessarily people going out randomly. There was people going into request to join the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's like growing up, I know I heard like my mom and my dad would say, because that's where they met. They met in basic training.
Oh wow.
But they always said they didn't have anywhere else to go. They didn't have any family that could afford tuition for colleges. My dad was smart, but
Yeah.
they both joined the military because, well, my mom was in Jacksonville. She's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So she joined, and my dad, he was turned 18, and his mom was like, you got to get out. And he was like, I guess I'll go join the military.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of people in that generation, that was their options.
That is true. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
there was no other source of income for them. No governmental programs, no bailouts, no
What
nothing like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is true. I mean, in terms of opportunity, I mean, what are you going to be doing? And I'm originally from California, so different culture there. There are a few people that joined the military, but it was more like, they're going to ROTC, going to college first, earn their commission. Very few people enlisted that I recall. And then I moved to Idaho, so much more agrarian community, and it was like, well, you can kind of stick around for the family business or the few opportunities that are around. But if you wanted to get out of there, which a lot of people did, there's kind of, one option. And
Mhm.
I remember in talking to the Navy recruiters, they said they met their recruiting goals so quickly because every region, has their recruiting goals. I mean, they can't just recruit unlimited numbers of people. I mean, they got to kind of stick to what they got. But people like local kids like set their calendars to like go in the first part of the month, so maybe they could be able to enlist and whatever else. I mean, it was overwhelmingly popular, but like you say, that was kind of the only option for people who don't have a boatload of cash or whatever else,
Yeah.
or want to attend a leftist indoctrination center for 4 years. It's kind of what they do
Yeah,
to get out.
exactly. And I would also say, like, some of the people that I went to school with, the ones that did join the military, I think, because we were like a sub Montgomery Maxwell Air Force Base. That's where, like, I grew up at a couple of years
Hmm.
at that base.
Yeah.
But it had a little, suburb. It was Millbrook, and so everybody there, like, most of the parents were in the military anyway. But I think it was the parents also that the kids I went to school with joined the military because their parents were actively, saying, "Hey, this is the best option for you."
Yeah.
And I don't know if that exists today either. I don't know how parents today are saying, "Hey, why don't you try the military? You've got these responsibilities at 18." You know.
Yeah, now, well, and I mean, 18 is a very different age now than it was then. You
Yeah,
think about
exactly.
how actual adults have been infantilized over the last several years, where you're on your parents' health insurance till you're 26. What?
Yep, yep. Yeah.
you know, so maybe
You
if they
take
were
that stuff away when they're 18, they'll be a little bit more desperate for options.
No, I
I
think
don't
that's
know.
definitely true, and certainly if you want to stick to a volunteer force, all volunteer force. I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to reinstitute the draft, that's a separate conversation. But yeah, if you need an all volunteer force, you have to create some areas in which people's backs are a little bit more against the wall, and desperation rises.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds kind of harsh to say, but it's how it is, and it it builds stronger character in people at 18 having to join than people figured out at 28. I don't know when they stop recruiting.
well, yeah, I just kind of basic guidelines from what I can recall is, for active duty, you can be, I think, can't be past the age of 29, I want to say. And then I think it's 39 and a half for reserves. And that's just like enlisted Navy from what I remember off the top of my head. Um, but, you can always get a waiver. And, there's certain things where it's like, I'm over the age limit, but, I'm in shape. I'm willing to do it. And you can get a waiver for that. You can go a little bit older. That's fine. Um, and so yeah, I think people are probably older before they make the decision to leave nowadays. I mean, I certainly was. I think I was 23 when I went to boot camp. Um, but there's still plenty of teenagers there too. I mean, they're oof, they're interesting. But there are a couple of 39-year-olds where it's like, dude, what are you doing? What happened?
Yeah, yeah, I know. You're like, you're either really hardcore dedicated or just out of out of options. And I
Yeah.
can't. I mean, I relate, but luckily I guess unluckily, well, almost 40. It's next month. It's coming up.
Oh wow, wow. It's coming for us all fast. Well, and also the two time periods that you looked at, like, I mean, obviously your parents went to boot camp before you were born, but the backdrop of that, you have the Cold War, Vietnam is over, you know, there's a bigger cause to be working towards, but it wasn't particularly dangerous. I mean, nothing's really going on in, late 70s, early 80s. But also, like, when you were young and getting out of high school, I mean, that's pre 9/11. So again, it's an opportunity and not particularly dangerous. I mean, Kosovo may have been happening, but there's nothing super crazy or a war going on. So it seemed like a good opportunity, probably too. A lot different than today.
Yeah, I know a lot of people because I graduated 2001, and I mean, people went into the military right before everything happened, and
Yeah. Yeah, I've
yeah,
talked to a few people who have been in or got out, joined right about the time of 9/11, and it's just such a huge turning point. Um, and yeah, I don't recall what recruiting numbers were like immediately post 9/11. If people had, if there was any sort of surge or if it stayed consistent, how that all worked. Um, but I remember there was, after Trump was elected, he said he was going to name General Mattis as his Secretary of Defense, and there's
Mad
like,
Dog Mattis.
yeah, and like I remember I was really excited about it at the time. It was, a massively popular appointment, and there are memes. He's like, no, I want to be the Secretary of War, and all these things. But I know that like really got, there was esprit de corps. There were guys I was talking to where it's like, all right, we got like a non-bureaucrat in charge, like a real Marine in charge, like I'll re-enlist or extend or whatever. Um, and yeah, it's like, who do we have now? Lloyd Austin, some fat bureaucrat. Like, oh wow, yeah, let me re-enlist, and this guy knows what he's doing. Um, yeah,
Well,
now
then
it's. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you remember what's that lady's name? Cindy Sheehan. You remember her?
Yeah, yeah,
And I remember growing up, I thought that air shows were the most awesome thing on the planet. Still are. Like that, I guess that's why I like working at airports, is because growing up on Air Force bases, getting buzzed by huge cargo planes was always fun. Like riding my bikes and stuff,
hmm
and going and seeing that now. So I guess that's kind of funny. But she would always remember she would poo-poo air shows, and she was like an anti-war activist and
yeah,
all in the news. And I don't know why everybody gave her so much attention, because it definitely couldn't help recruiting either, and
well,
that was like parents. There's people that are my age that are parents of like 18, 20-year-olds, and
hmm
she came around that time where you were like, warmongering and glorifying military and industrial complex and all that, and that could be another thing. Like the parents never said, the military is not that bad, because when
yeah,
we were, when we were raising our kids, all the like social figures were all anti-military. That
yeah,
there was no, we came out with these Top Gun remakes too late. They had, there was no pro-military type things like in between like 2005 maybe and now. Like it's all folk and
yeah.
uh,
No, it's definitely true because you have to think with such a small percentage of the U.S. population serving or having been veterans. I mean, we're talking only like, if you include veterans, only like a couple percent. It's very, so for someone to know personally a service member, current or veteran, it's actually not very likely, or enough where they could talk to them about their experience or get an accurate picture. So you're kind of left with what media's pumping out, whether it's a movie where it's like, oh, that looks cool, they're shooting them up, and or just like, post 9/11, it got to be like, oh, thank military members for their service. So it's almost like this exalted status for someone who's otherwise relatively ordinary, just, regular guy or woman. Um, so, that's kind of the image that you get. And then you have like a Cindy Sheehan who's, for better or for worse, presenting a different perspective where it's like, no, it's not this glorified thing. Like I lost my son. He was killed, and I'm sorry for what exactly? And people at the time didn't really want to hear it. I kind of see more of her point now, being older, more experienced, and hence more cynical than I was 15 years ago or so.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
There's like I think it's photos of soldiers, peeing on people. That was all bad.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of bad publicity that came out, and I don't know.
yeah. No, and I know the story they're talking about is they were Marine snipers, and they captured and killed some Taliban bomb makers and urinated on their corpses, and I think it was about 6 of them. I mean, they got drummed out. It was a whole big thing, and I don't think that the potential recruits, people who the military could have recruited, I don't think they were troubled by like, oh my god, these guys are peeing on dead Taliban. I think they were more like, oh my god, I might,
Everything's recorded.
yeah,
Everything's recorded.
yeah, I might see myself, possibly doing this, and or I could be in those shoes, and I'm gonna get railroaded for it. After
Exactly.
serving why would I want to sign up for that? It'd be one thing if I get wounded or something like that, but my expectation is my leadership in my country is going to have my back, and they're not.
Exactly. And that's changed with like social media, all these handheld phones. I don't know. It's weird. It's good to have transparency too, but I do think it um, changes like the dynamic of like how people perceive,
Oh, for sure.
uh, you know, that,
Yeah, you can't, you have this image of the Marine of like climbing the mountain and slaying the dragon and swinging a sword around, and it's polished, it's professional, and then you have this other image of actual reality, and I mean, war is hell, and it's the image, the the unadult, the unblemished image that you had in your head just doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, it's more real and it's understandable when you put it in context. But if you just have like a 5-second attention span, you're like, oh my gosh.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and for the marketing campaigns now, of course, we all know about like uh, the Army Corporal Emma with two moms, that animated thing. I don't know if you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, that's not getting anybody. That's not getting anybody to go like, yeah, right on, America. It's not. It's
Yeah. It. Who cares? And my thing is, and this is like easily forgotten by people very, very quickly, where it's serving in the military is a privilege, it's not a right. Um, and what I mean by this is, at least by around the time I joined, and I'm sure the percentage is higher now, is 70% of the people who walk through a recruiter's door are going to be turned away. And that's going to be for anything from, they've got a dick tattooed on their face, or they have a criminal record, or they're overweight, um, any number of things that can prevent them at that moment from serving. Now, obviously, if they're overweight, they can work on that, but that's recruiters are legally limited in how much they can do because of liability. They run them too hard, they drop dead of a heart attack. Recruiters now liable, stuff like that. But I mean, you're turning away an enormous part of the population. So of that remaining 30%, who can you appeal to and get the highest, you know, amount of that remaining pie, so to speak? And you know, someone who's in such a unique spot of like, well, I got two lesbian moms, I went to college, I'm pretty privileged otherwise, but I joined. Like I'm sorry, that's just
Yeah.
not who's
Love
making up
is
the
love,
ranks.
but love is love. But let's go, out there and kick some butt.
It actually,
Um,
words of wisdom right there. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Let's go kick some butt. Yes. It's,
yeah.
people want to be on a winning team and, uh, and really like take charge and, whatever that looks like. And I just don't view the military as a winning team anymore. And I don't think it's any
No,
one
no.
thing, but gosh, like 13 people, 13 soldiers, Marines, and a sailor were killed last year, with the Afghanistan pullout. And it's like,
I
well,
was
what?
just gonna say, what kind of message is that sending to any kind of potential recruits? Like, we fought in Afghanistan for 20 years, and you're
Yeah,
withdrawing and leaving. Everybody that passed away and fought.
yeah,
You're just giving it back and just saying, let's let them. You know what? I mean, at one kind of far left side of me goes, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have got there in the first place.
right.
But it was how we handled it, which brought it all back. I think, all the different opinions of all the presidents. The presidents we had in between the war, that we were just polar opposites, one back to back. So
Yeah,
it was, so that didn't help. And now we're at the point where, we had Biden just go say, let's just withdraw the whole thing and go into Ukraine instead. So
that's another thing that's just completely crazy. We'll get into Ukraine here in a second. But yeah, I think there's probably a million different ways you could have done that pullout. I mean, after 20 years, you're overdue no matter what you do. Um, but yeah, that so many people were killed and that it was just so disorganized and no one was held accountable. What was his name? Lieutenant Colonel Scheller. There was a Marine who spoke out against it, and like they kicked him out of the Marine Corps. He went short of
hmm
retirement, and it's like that's the only guy who's been punished. And then I think the U.S. Naval Academy fired their defensive coordinator for their football team. Like those were the only DoD folks who got fired in the wake of Afghanistan. I mean, crazy, and
yeah,
just no accountability.
it could have been cost effective to at least bring everything back and then withdraw and somehow make it some kind of positive PR spin. But the way it was,
Yeah,
you're watching on the news. Like, I'm not egomaniac, but I'm watching it as a normal person, knowing that this is way off.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, once we leave, I mean, and I think we should have left. Like, there are some people talking about leaving 2,000 troops there. I wasn't even necessarily in favor of that. It's like, look, this is not rocket science. Once we pull out completely, Taliban will take over. That's how it is. It's just that's what it is. So, yeah, you can leave 2,000 troops there, but it's like, what, you're going to have this endless war, and I'm sorry, my countrymen are worth a little bit more than that. Get them out of there.
hmm
Sad to say, I don't. You know, Afghanistan. I mean, it's a totally different place with a totally different culture, and people forget like the Taliban came up as like a conservative response to like highway robberies and all this lawlessness and stuff anyway, um, and Afghanistan has kind of got to figure out its own stuff at some point. All this propping up, and they're talking about they had security forces that were ready to stand up. It's like, I've never been to Afghanistan, and I know that's bullshit. There's no way.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of turn either. There's a lot of respect there for the people that were there, and hopefully someone there isn't all just somebody had to think of some sort of exit strategy then I don't know. Like to have hope that they had some kind of sense doing what they did, but it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me as just a common person.
Oh yeah, yeah. It never does, and I think we can come away from Afghanistan. It's like, gosh, we were there 20 years. You know, maybe we learned some lessons, but in terms of embroiling ourselves in a conflict, maybe we should be a little bit more cautious of the next one. And then, here we go. We've got Ukraine, and keep sending money over there and everything else, and it's like, why are we stirring the pot with this stuff? I mean, look, I feel bad for Ukrainians. I feel bad for Russians, and I gotta say, I think I have a lot more in common with your average Ukrainian or average Russian than I do with anyone in my political class, and my any of my political leadership. You know, they don't seem to be representing my interests at all.
Yeah, and there's the whole 9/11 thing that was all created, or I mean, I'm not a 9/11 denier or anything, but there's people that speculate that this was all just to get people into war, and who knew that you could go into a war without any of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would you have to create this drama of two planes like killing 3,000 people if you could just walk in and give a country that's fighting another country billions of dollars?
Yeah.
Without doing any of that. Like, it's possible.
It's so crazy to me, and the degree to which we're agitating is really crazy. Having the debacle of Afghanistan just 12 months in the rear view. Well, I mean, even less than that when you think about when the Ukraine conflict started. It doesn't seem that our return on investment for foreign intervention is paying off any dividends. I mean, this is like, for anyone who's read The Unnecessary War, talking about World War II, it kicked off because Germany invaded Poland. And this is, there's one specific region that Germany wanted because the Versailles Treaty had given it to Poland. And for whatever reason, and there's a lead up to it, but the British didn't want that to happen, so they and France gave Poland a war guarantee that if Germany invaded, they were going to defend Poland. And Poland went, oh, okay, so we don't have to negotiate to give this land back. All right, Germany, you want that land back? Tough. You're going to have to fight for it. And it precipitated World War II. And I mean, 50 million people plus died. And, this whole propping up of Ukraine is maddening to me because I just do not see what the U.S. interest is. But we continue to send money.
I don't see any at all either. And why get yourself? I mean, actually, it's been going on for a little bit, and I don't know how. I wonder how long it started with World War II. I mean, I haven't read that book,
Yeah,
but I wonder how long it would be that it took things to kick off like that.
Oh, sure.
We
Yeah.
thought I was under the impression that holy cow, Ukraine, and it's gonna be World War III right away. But now it's just you just get a Twitter update that we're sending $5 billion for this and $10 billion for that, to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we don't really have. I mean, we have a few people going over there. I assume.
Yeah, as like advisors, which is never a good sign either. If you remember like your Vietnam history. Yeah.
So I'm like, how long is it going to be at this point before it kicks off? And I can see how you're like, how did it start back then? Like, we're not learning from our history at all, because you're like, how did it start to where it went from that one small thing to World War II, and now you have this? And to me, as just a common person, I just say, wow, we're sending a lot of money over there for no reason, and then it's going to be, at one point, does it become a big deal?
Yeah.
Here? And we don't have any, but I mean, we don't have the people to see it as a big deal to recruit, because there's, I don't know, too much. I really think it comes to the family, because you remove the social media from it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have that back then.
that
So
that is true. Yeah.
that has to be the part that we're missing is like the family values.
Hmm.
You know, we don't sit around the dinner table, but sit around the TV before Netflix. Or if we're watching something. You have to.
Yeah.
I think that's where it starts. Unfortunately, you gotta get it back to that point because there's too much of anybody can go on and get a reason not to join just by opening up Facebook or Twitter or Reddit or anything,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and
and
yeah.
they're not listening to their parents, or their parents aren't telling them.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And at the end of the day, I think there's a million different possible permutations for what kind of experience you can have in the military, and if you really know what you're getting into, I think you can make it a positive one for sure. Um,
yeah,
they
my dad he was family support services. Okay, when I say my dad, he did go to South Korea, and
Mhm.
they were pretty sure that this was around the time that they were pretty sure something was going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Like to where he would like they couldn't wave across the DMT or DMZ.
Yeah.
DMT is something different. DMZ, they couldn't do that because if they waved, then the people on the other side would get in trouble for waving back. You
Right.
know, it's,
Yeah, it's just
it was
so
like that
tense.
tense.
That's crazy.
And but my dad, like I remember videos. They were like, he was handing like the bug spray and toiletry to the people going out in combat. That was my dad's job.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's
That's
not like if
funny.
you join, your only job is like Rambo. You've
Right.
got,
Right.
there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into planning Rambo,
Yeah,
and
whole lot of support roles for sure. Yeah.
so they don't. I'm sure that's missing too. And the recruitment can be like, hey, you don't have to just go out and do all this. You can be, little roles, all help,
Yeah.
everything.
Oh
So,
yeah, definitely need
but I'm
the
still
support
proud. I'm
roles.
proud of my dad for his service.
Absolutely, you should be. Yeah, that's
But
no, and it's all important stuff. And I think whether you're going as Rambo or as your dad was a support role, I think people need to have this sense that they're a part of a winning team. And for me with the Navy, I mean, each subsequent year, how I saw them respond to failure really did not sit well with me. And you can pick a small aspect like fitness. We didn't do a fitness test. We're supposed to do one twice a year. We didn't do one for 2 years because of COVID. And boy, wouldn't you know it, a lot of people failed first time back. And it's like,
yeah, I can imagine.
what are we doing, guys? And so much of this, a lot of times, is like to lower the standards, or fudge a little bit on the weigh-ins, or just a little bit of little incremental change, whatever else, just to keep the numbers up. And it's like, well, no, your response should be a culture of excellence and fitness, to change this trend. And okay, you failed a test, all right, so we're just going to do like a board and just like discuss it. There's no right or wrong answers. And it's like, well, no, now you're not prepared for the scenario that you're training for. This is a disaster waiting to happen. But uh, that's that's how they respond to failure. I don't know, and they got to be part of a winning team. But I don't know what the clear objective is. What if civilians see anything like that? I mean, what clear objective or clear goal do you think the military could have that would get people signing back up?
Well, I would say I would love to see them try to push like air shows and
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, there's like something that they had at Mayport in Jacksonville and NAS is they would. I mean, they still do it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just not. It was just always so cool. Like you would see, like one year they would have it at the NAS, the Naval Air Station there.
Yeah.
They would do air shows, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd see all the Blue Angels and everything. That was so awesome. And then the next year they would have it at the sea, like or at the beach, like
Yeah.
by Mayport, and they would have like all the hovercrafts like storm the beach and show what it was like, and
Oh, that's
that was
really
always so
cool.
neat. Yeah, it's yeah, and
Well,
but
yeah, it's
they need more marketing for that, and I think that was killed like 15 years ago, and they tried to make any kind of showing your arms or showing like a gluttony of military abundance, but it's not. The purpose was to get people to sign up and be awed by
no,
the
that's
machinery and everything. That's what
yeah.
they need to do.
No,
They
and
need to and it can't be that expensive to
I think
go out there.
you're totally right because like when Top Gun came out, the Navy saw like a 500% bump in recruitment or something crazy, and it's
Hmm.
like, one movie, awesome movie back when, you know, Jerry Bruckheimer and and Don Simpson was still alive back then, and they just cranked out amazing movies, blockbusters. But
Hmm.
yeah, just like even on a more individual level of air shows or something like that, like something that people can see in person, I think is a good deal. And you're right. I think public perception of that has gone way different. I mean, remember when Trump wanted to have a military parade and everyone's like, no, you
Hmm.
can't do that. Like,
But you know what? Everybody knows it scared some other countries. Like they were,
yeah.
even though we had our crazy, people that were so negative about what that all was,
Hmm.
still showing off everything is very intimidating
Yeah.
for China, everyone else. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, look, people don't understand that part of it anymore, but he did. He got it.
Yeah. 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 And I can definitely see the point of like, maybe we don't want to do that, but the reasons that they gave, it was kind of like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is really would be really helpful for military recruitment, whatever else. But I guess we're moving away from that. We're
Yeah,
shouldn't have
I
the
mean,
military.
the negative side of it is like the consequences are minute, and like, yeah, so what? You don't like it. You're not who I'm trying to recruit. You were never gonna volunteer anyway. You know.
Right. You have not only do you have to market, you have to market to the right audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people shouting down and trying to prevent the parade, or like you mentioned, an air show, something smaller, something more local. It's like, well, you're not exactly who we're trying to get. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Completely different
Yeah. So
demographic. Yeah.
just,
Um,
it's
but
ground level is where it starts. I guess you could learn that from Obama, right?
yes, yes.
Grassroots.
That, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Well, yeah, Ashley, really appreciate your perspective and also sharing your family experiences and everything else, and just kind of more of a civilian perspective too. I mean, I mainly speak with veterans, get an idea of their experiences, things that have already happened, but in some of the cases, some of them are drafted. The guys that I talk to, so recruitment isn't
Oh
really on
wow.
the radar for them. Um, but yeah,
Wow. Yeah. That's got to be an interesting conversation with those guys.
yeah, yeah. Actually, well, there are two guys I talked to who well, there's one episode I haven't released, but he this guy got drafted during Vietnam, and he was a doctor, but he had a foot in like deformity that he was born with, and so he was like 4F. Couldn't draft him, and then I guess they got so desperate they're like, "Yeah, you're going. There's no option."
Oh, yeah.
Um, and he's like, "Well, I'm 4F." They're like, "Not anymore. You're going." Um, and then another guy I talked to, he joined during Vietnam, like during the draft, but he knew like that he wanted to join the army since he was a little kid. And then kind of the same scenario with my dad, like it was during the draft. He's like, well, I could wait to get drafted, or I could just join and hope it works out in my favor. And so he joined, But yeah, and then another guy I talked to, he was given the option, join the military or go to jail. So kind of like a
Oh,
draft.
okay.
Yeah, on a very personal level, but yeah, it's with an all volunteer force, it's like you say, it really is all about marketing and putting on that display of power and showing that people would be joining a winning team. I think is really really important.
Yeah, luckily they do have a couple movies coming out, and I don't know, it's that whole weak generation creates strong men and all that stuff. We're in that weak generation part, and so
Yes, yes, we are, unfortunately. Um,
I,
well, before we sign off, any parting words of wisdom, or anything you want to share?
oh, let's see, we can just instill family values and pride in America, and that'll get you further.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. It has everything to do with a solid foundation and as well as with morale, both very very important things. But well, Ashley, thank you again so much for coming on, giving your perspective, really valuable and fun chatting with
Hey,
you.
thanks for having me.
Absolutely.